The Saw franchise, arguably one of my favorite guilty pleasure horror franchise, and it's even funny calling it a guilty pleasure franchise because it really didn't start off that way. There was a time where there was a big chunk of Saw fans out there clamoring at the mouth every October as these movies were being released. But once you get to the 10th installment, that large fan base gets a little bit more smaller, get a little bit more niche. And as happens with most horror franchises that continue on that long, they start to get pretty bad, pretty dumb, pretty weird. And with the newest Saw film coming out, Saw X, I thought why not go through the previous 9 entries and dive into my thoughts about why I love this franchise and how over time it became so frustrating to be a fan defending why we found these movies so fun. In this first review, I'll be covering Saw 1, 2, and 3. In the following video, I'll be covering Saw 4, 5, and 6, then finishing off with the last 3 Saw movies in the franchise, Saw 3D, Jigsaw, and Spiral from the Book of Saw.
There will be blood.
And as always, these are just my opinions on these movies. I know we all have our different takes. This Saw franchise in particular is filled with so many characters, some that we love, some that we hate, some crazy theories still populating out there. All I'm mainly going to be focusing on is my opinion about how I feel with these films and what it was like growing up, going every year to see a Saw movie in theaters. So without further ado, let's start the Spooky Mama season the right way. Hit and play on 2004's Saw. Now, as you'll hear me brag about as we continue on with this series is, yes, I watched most of these Saw movies in theaters as they were coming out, except Saw 1. Saw 1 was one of those movies back in the day when Blockbuster was a thing where the cover of the movie caught your attention, that you picked it up, looked at the back, and was like, what is this about? And in 2004, I was 9 years old, and my daddy found it at Blockbuster and thought, family movie night, kids. And while Mama might have not loved the movie as much, Dad and I were hooked right away. Most of you probably have a recollection of what it was like watching this first Saw movie. It's still considered, I think, the best in the franchise, mainly due to its insane twist that will forever curse the franchise in trying to replicate a reveal just like that one. Still though, this Saw movie kicked things off where for 6 years straight, they would release a movie in October and we would be there every time. And well, with the film that started it off, we open up with 2 strangers waking up in a dirty, nasty bathroom. Getting some of the common trivia of this movie right out of the way, Adam here is played by Leigh Whannell, the writer of the movie, and someone who I would say has made a name for himself in the horror genre. He goes on to write the first 3 Saw movies, a couple Insidious films, directing the 3rd one, writing and directing Upgrade, and writing and directing The Invisible Man. Leigh Whannell today, whatever project he has up and coming, immediately buying a ticket. But if you tell me he's acting in the movie, I'm gonna wait for the trailer.
Lawrence, calm down. There must be a way out of this. What's your name? What's going on here? I'm having a blast. This is the most fun I've had without lubricant. Who are you? You know who I am.
Nowadays, that's like a common diss on the movie, is Leigh Whannell's acting as Adam here, but he seems like such a nice guy in real life. I feel bad for criticizing the movie for that aspect. If anything, he should be inspiration for me because he started off as a movie critic in Australia on a TV show. Check out his review for Halloween H2O.
How a slasher film works generally.
Okay,
All right,
tell me how a
this is how it
slasher
generally
film
works with a famous graph. You've got a bit of boring stuff, then a death, then another bit of boring stuff, and a death. Then another bit of character, boring stuff, maybe a bit of nookie. A death! All Kevin Williamson did to make Scream good is, he made these bits in between the deaths interesting. He made them like 90210. He put good dialogue. H2O takes us back 10 years. All these bits are boring again. You're sitting there going, what's going on? And it's taking us back to the 80s. And as a horror fan, I was sitting there and I was very disappointed that it could have done more.
And I guess while I'm on the topic of talking about the writer of the movie, it's worth mentioning this is directed by James Wan. In fact, Saw is the love child of Leigh Whannell and James Wan.
No, we had similar interests. James was talented and I was interested in being talented. So
A man who definitely doesn't need an introduction in what he's done in the horror genre, but it's just cool to know this is where they started. They were just 2 kids straight out of film school in Australia, made a little short film, hopped on a plane to LA, and then just made this movie on $1 million budget. Like, that is so inspiring. Because watching this movie again, I think it still holds up. Sure, it's got some, like, quirks to it, but I consider that the Saw personality. You know what I'm talking about here. These borderline ridiculous but brilliant transitions from scene to scene. The grungy green, terribly lit rooms, the over-the-top editing that makes it feel like a late 90s rock video. I feel like this is the kind of stuff you get when you have to work with what you got, because watching this movie back, it's not even as gory as the franchise is known for. A lot of the violence in here is implied. So many times we'll get scenes of something horrific going on, like somebody opening someone's stomach, or cutting off their leg, or someone getting downright shot in the head, and it's always just dripping out, or maybe guts off screen. You never get to see the actual prosthetic body getting opened up the way you would in later sequels. And I feel again that goes towards praising James Wan here, and you can feel the passion he had as a filmmaker. But getting a little bit ahead of myself, sticking to the plot here, we find Adam and Dr. Gordon put in this situation for the sins they have created in their past. Dr. Gordon is in here not just for cheating on his wife, but being a neglectful parent, while at the same time being a bit of a cold-hearted doctor at work, while Adam is an amateur private investigator who gets paid by people to find out if their spouses are cheating or what other dirty secrets they're hiding in their off time. And you know, for a film we praise so much about, I feel like there were so many variables in these traps that could have gone easily. Just the fact that the movie opens up with a key that should have been the thing to free Adam in the beginning, I can never stop thinking about that, what this movie would have been like if that key actually got to free Adam from the beginning. Or just the way they came up with how to grab the tape. They could have been sitting there for 2 hours because they couldn't reach the tape. Yet the only time the variable goes wrong is when he gets the heart on the toilet.
I really wish I had checked in there first.
Literally 99% of us would have gone to the top of the toilet first, would we not have? Something that the franchise will kind of later be terrible with is its jumping back and forth from flashbacks, present day, past events. The first Saw movie, although it does a lot of jumping around and you're following people at different points in time, I feel like it's still easy to follow and just adds more intrigue and layers to the film. Introducing us to two detectives on the hunt for Jigsaw, Detective Tapp, played by the awesome Danny Glover, and Detective Singh. This is where we start to get introduced to other traps outside of Adam and Gordon that, like, for the first time seeing these things, both the horror and intrigue of, could I survive that? How would I do in a situation like that? This victim in particular was put in a maze filled with razor wires where he has to find his way out before the door shuts on him permanently. Jigsaw chose him because he was someone attempting to end their own life, and well, Jigsaw helped him out with that, so good guy Jigsaw. Another man who's implied to be an arsonist is put in a room filled with combination codes all over the room, is covered in this flammable liquid, holding a candle while simultaneously walking barefoot in attempt to read all these codes. Like, this is just overkill, man. That's one thing we'll start to see as these traps continue on. Some of them feel like they're at the level of what the person deserves, and others you're just kind of like, Jigsaw, you're kind of a dick. With this trap right here, I would honestly just stay in place and just make up combinations myself. You wouldn't. What if the combination code is at the very tippy top? I don't see a ladder in that room. But the most infamous one that I gotta get my hands on a replica of one of these someday, Amanda in the reverse bear trap. I think there's a lot of reasons this specific trap is remembered, not just because of its iconic design, but also because it has the most standard set for every Saw trap. This is the first one we get to see where Jigsaw plays. Jigsaw doesn't even have a TV appearance in the bathroom trap or the previous two traps. He first shows up with Billy the Puppet right here. We also get that iconic Saw editing that, like, just makes everything intense. Whether you hate that editing or not, you put that in front of anything and you immediately start pounding at 100 beats per minute. Is that high or not? I'm not a doctor. And lastly, also, another thing the Saw franchise was amazing at is introducing what you think are nobody throwaway characters, and through further sequels, turning them into important, vital characters. Because as most know, Amanda ends up becoming a big character in the universe and is even returning in the latest Saw movie. But it wasn't just like how awesome and terrifying it would be to be put in those situations. This movie also shows you how you get kidnapped, and that alone also terrified me. The movie goes on to show how both Gordon and Adam were kidnapped at one point, and while Gordon's kidnapping takes like 3 flashbacks throughout the movie to get you, I kid you not, they cut back to Gordon in this parking lot like 4 times before we get the whole story. But the mere reflecting somebody in an awesome red and black silky robe, I had to get me one of these for these reviews. This was my excuse to get this. You know, the funny thing about getting this is it came with shorty shorts. I was not expecting that. I'm the Saw apprentice with shorty shorts. Bet you'd let me kidnap you. But in all seriousness, that shot of someone just creeping out of your car in that pig mask, absolutely terrifying. I never walk through these big parking lots the same after witnessing that for the first time as a kid, and Adams is even more terrifying. We start off with him developing the photos he's taken of Gordon throughout the day in a room that's filled with red lights, followed by a great suspenseful sequence of having the lights turned off in his apartment, using just his camera flash as a way to see where he's going, Billy the puppet laughing in his face for the first time in the series. Nah, I hear that in my apartment, I'm running with my shorty shorts. There was actual suspense and fear built in because in a weird way, this feels like it could happen to somebody out there. And that's what really makes movies scary as an adult. I honestly don't have many negative things to say about this first Saw movie. Looking back at it now, you can see some plot holes or variable things that had to be so specific for it to work out. But for the first entry in a franchise, it was filled with characters I actually cared about. Like the whole story arc of Tap, the detective, from trying to hunt down Jigsaw to losing his partner to becoming obsessed with a case and then dying. That was terrible. There needs to be justice for Danny Glover's character. But even just the fact that this wasn't meant to be a franchise, it was gonna be a one and done movie, and the only explanation we get for why Jigsaw does all of this is he was a cancer patient who just thought other people were taking their lives for granted, and that's like all the motivation you needed. And so yeah, even knowing the twist at the end of this film, it is so awesome seeing it with that Saw music that like gets my goosebumps flowing every time. I think Zepp as a character is a weirdo and a freak that deserved that toilet smashing, but man, did he luck out with getting named after this awesome track.
Or as they called you around the hospital, Zap.
So yeah, first Saw movie, top tier, love it. Let's go on to Saw 2. Can't believe I forgot to turn on the lights. Gotta be better than that, Chris. Gotta be better than that. Saw 2. Not gonna lie to you guys, currently probably my personal favorite sequel in the franchise. There's only one other Saw movie that might rival it. See if you can guess what it'll be. But with that first film being a knockout success, they wasted no time with getting a sequel made coming out just 1 year later. And as horror fans, we know what the rule is for when you put out a sequel.
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, death scenes are always much more elaborate.
And Saw 2 is no different. I think the things that stood out to me the most is I really just love the setting, this house filled with traps at every door. The fact that this sequel actually dives into John Kramer as Jigsaw and gives us more of his backstory and really just personality, because from here on out, the boy's either on his deathbed or just shown through flashbacks. But kicking things off here, they introduce us to a new trap. I feel like that's always the most exciting thing about a Saw sequel is what crazy new thing has Jigsaw come up with?
Hello, Michael. I want to play a game.
And they did not disappoint. The victim is revealed to be an informant, so Jigsaw, with his twisted mindset, thinks the only way to survive is to give up the thing that gives you your job. Now again, if you ask me as a Saw fan, perfect trap here. I feel like it's at that right level of twisted, messed up, and it makes you go, could I do it? Could I not do it? Big question is my eye numb already from the surgery of putting the key behind me? Because looking at my eyeball that close, it looks like I'd be able to still feel everything, meaning would not survive this trap, would die right away. At least I would have a cool metal luchador mask at the end of it. But before we move on to the main character of the movie and who we'll be following, I do think it's worth mentioning that we switched directors this time around. James Wan decided not to return, which kind of sucks, but smart of him to move on to bigger and badder things. This time bringing in Darren Lynn Bousman, who will go on to direct a couple of the Saw sequels, and I really like how he kept in line with a lot of things that James Wan did in the first movie, from the grungy green style, the crazy editing. He could have easily have come in and did his own thing, but he knew what fans liked about it, and he stayed true to that, and even added a weird transition here and there.
I'll be right there.
Saw transitions. They tasty. For here we'll follow Detective Eric Matthews, played by Donnie Wahlberg, related to Marky Wahlberg, beginning a trend in Saw movies that will get so overplayed over time, following the detective trying to hunt down Jigsaw. One could argue maybe Saw 1 had that, but I still felt like Adam and Gordon were treated like the real main characters. Detective Tap Danny Glover was more of a side character that just enhanced the story. Here, Eric Matthews is our main focus, and for the majority of the sequels, it'll be a new detective within this precinct, continuing on that trend I was mentioning about characters in the background who feel like nobodies that end up becoming bigger players as sequels continue on. Like Detective Carey here, who did make a small appearance in the first movie and is now coming back for the sequel. Detective Matthews was nowhere to be seen in the first film because he's purposely made himself a desk detective now. The movie goes on to imply he's a dirty, or I should say bad cop who, although got many arrests, a lot of them were done through brutal force or planting evidence, eventually catching up with him and making him realize that it's just better if he stays inside the precinct. Something I feel that we do get a lot less of as the series continues on is this would be the last time we would see Jigsaw booby trap his hideouts. I think it's so cool knowing that even if you attempt to come to where Jigsaw is, he's just rigged the place. And although it looks like the cops have Jigsaw red-handed and can arrest him away and put him away for not being a murderer, as he likes to put it.
I've never murdered anyone in my life. The decisions are up to them.
I'm just gonna say right now, I'm on the side of calling BS, but not here to argue with you. But it quickly gets revealed to Eric Matthews Jigsaw won't be going anywhere because he's got his son hostage in an unknown location filled with criminals that he's helped put away through planted evidence. So everyone in there would not take too kindly to this kid, and not because he lied about being gay in Scream 4.
I'm gay. I'm gay.
From here, the movie just becomes a back and forth of Eric Matthews talking to Jigsaw while cutting back to what is going on in the house. Sticking to the Jigsaw part of things, we got almost nothing of John Kramer in the last movie. Sure, he had the iconic voice that he was lending at the end that like gave us chills with that music. But I think it is thanks to Saw 2 that Tobin Bell earned himself horror icon status. Everything from his demeanor, way of speaking.
Get me a glass of water. I would very much appreciate that.
I just can't help but to love John Kramer as a character and the mistakes they made by killing this dude off way too early. But some key takeaways here, because Leigh Whannell did come back to continue writing the movie, is they flesh out further his motive. So in the last film, it was just implied, oh, cancer made him realize other people are taking their life for granted, so let me pay while I'm still here on this world before I die. But Saw 2 reveals it was more than that. Afterwards, he attempted to end his own life in a car accident that put a metal pipe through his stomach, and then through the will of wanting to live, he survived and found new appreciation for his life. Then taking that exact same situation and putting it on others. They explain also the whole carving out the jigsaw piece on his victims is not because he's making a great skin quilt out there. That's what I was hoping for as a kid. I would love to see Jigsaw in a skin-covered blanket. That would be nice, would it not? But instead, it was his metaphoric way of saying that the person is missing a vital part of humanity, the instinct to survive. Really just creating a much more fascinating character, letting you dive deeper into his thoughts. It's kind of what makes Saw 2 worth it for me. Now, jump into the house where all the traps are being laid out. Yeah, you're filled with a bunch of one-dimensional a-hole characters who have all done their time in jail. Out of all the characters, there's not very many I root for other than the kid Amanda and the character of Jonas, because he actually attempts to put a group effort for them to survive. But I love the free roam idea that Saw 2 explores. While the last film had 2 characters chained in one location for the whole movie, I found it so appealing to have this random assortment of characters that can free roam the house into different rooms with different traps, while at the same time they breathe in this toxic fume. They're promised that in 3 hours the doors will open, setting them free, but the fumes will kill them in 2 hours unless they can find an antidote that have been hidden around the house. Which is a good segue into the traps we get to see in this house. So it's assumed that in random doors throughout this house there is a trap made for every person here. One of the first big traps is for Obi, who is actually revealed to be the person that kidnapped most of the people and brought them into this room. And let me tell you, Obi is a different kind of breed.
Welcome to the Salty Spittoon. How tough are you?
If you're gonna threaten me with a knife, you may as well cut me a little.
Right this way. Sorry to keep you waiting.
But he's given the task to go inside this furnace that'll contain 2 antidotes, and when he pulls the second one, it locks him in. Now, if he paid attention to the Jigsaw trap, he would have known how to escape.
Once you are in hell, only the devil can help you out.
And look, again, this was a horrifying one to me. Being burnt alive in a closed oven-like space, no thank you. But I would say I could survive this one. I would have paid attention to turning that red knob. But to me, the most absolutely horrifying and memorable trap of Saw 2 is the Pit of Needles. This trap was meant to go to Xavier, who's a drug dealer and responsible for getting a lot of people addicted. Jigsaw thought he could learn his lesson by suffering through the same pain his clients would go through and getting into this Pit of Needles, where one of them contains the key to unlock the door that'll most likely contain the antidote. Now, what an a-hole. The man grabs Amanda, throws him in the pit, and I just cringe and squeal. Oh, it looks so damn painful. Even if that's a survivable trap, I don't want to do it. I don't want to jump in there. I don't care. Just the thought of those little needles pricking you at every second while you're trying to dig through it. Oh, absolutely horrible, but damn awesome and memorable, I'll tell you that. And I don't even know if the next trap is even worth discussing, because all of us, I think, could have survived it if maybe we just had a little bit of common sense in our brain. But it doesn't happen that way for Addison, and, well, at least she gets to go with a nice view of red light. But as the group starts dwindling down, Xavier is desperate and remembers something that Jigsaw said in the tape from the beginning of the movie that could help him out.
You won't possess the combination to the safe. The numbers are in the back of your mind.
I always found that to be kind of like a cool little add-on that everybody has the numbers on the back of their head, but it's color-coded to the order on the rainbow. Dead. Right now, without looking it up, tell me the order of the rainbow. They don't teach you that in school. We see rainbows everywhere nowadays. I would not know the order in which the rainbow falls. So that would leave me with like, what, 8, 9 different combinations? And I'd be trying them all. I'd die. I would die trying to do the combinations. But Xavier is then put on a mission where he starts eliminating all the people getting the numbers on the back of their head, leaving just Amanda and Daniel to try and survive on their own. This was also a tense situation to me, okay? Now you no longer have to worry about the traps or Jigsaw. It's dang Xavier coming at you with a nail bat. I loved how the chase brought us to the Saw bathroom, and although this is just the second movie in the franchise, that bathroom was already nostalgic. Watching this sequel, when that bathroom popped up with the lights turning on, you were like, I remember this place, goosebumps. While all of this is going on, though, Detective Matthews has had enough and brings back his old school police ways and beats the answers out of Jigsaw. And man, this should not be that funny to see a police officer beat a dying cancerous old man, but the face Jigsaw makes during these moments, I giggled. But respect to Jigsaw, man, because he takes some beatings. Even just ripping off tape hurts him. I make that noise at 2 a.m., know what I'm saying? Bringing us to like the final 10 minutes of the movie here, where you know it's time for that Hello Zep music to start playing, and right at a great time too, where Xavier realizes, oh crap, how am I gonna see the number on the back of my head where he rips off his own skin? Insanity. Still, our heroes get the upper hand, able to survive, leading to what we thinking is Detective Matthews and the police finally finding our friends, where we get the big twist reveal of the movie. All the events that took place in the house happened days earlier, with the police witnessing a recording that was being transmitted from a different house, while Detective Matthews is at the correct house just a very late in the game. This was kind of a cool twist. I still don't think it's like as mind-blowing as the first one, but yeah, first time watching it, that got me. That made me go, what? Especially when the entire time the kid was right there, feet away from his father, as Jigsaw would say, in a safe and secure location. Jigsaw, a punny man. But ultimately being revealed that the entire point of these games were not just to set up another situation for someone to get payback, but this was the true test for Amanda to become the apprentice, or I should say take up the mantle of Jigsaw. I love this reveal the most out of all the reveals, because Amanda is a character that I felt had so much potential, had so much going on for it, and as we go on in the series, you'll see what they do with her, but I like the idea that somebody who was a victim from Jigsaw's traps ended up getting not only rehabilitated, but became so loyal to Jigsaw, wanting to follow him, treat him as a mentor, to want to carry on this Jigsaw legacy. Like, I just love that concept. She's definitely needing her own voice changer, because I'm not feeling her creepy voice.
Hello, Eric. You probably don't even remember me.
But yeah, Saw 2 to me, a winner, a great sequel. So much promise for the franchise, and at this point, like I said, it's 2005. The internet might have been in its infancy, but even then, I had access to it. And man, them forums and Saw fan pages were crazy with theories. We were all just like, what's next? What's gonna happen? What's going on? And we got a sequel the very next year, my boys. Saw 3, the movie I remember liking a lot more than I did on my rewatch recently. Now, as I was mentioning to you guys, at this point in time, there's a fan base for these Saw movies. We're creating theories, we're wondering what's going on and what could be happening. With a lot of these theories, there was also a lot of questions. So Saw 3 was kind of the movie to set things right, explain some things from the past, and also maybe be the ending of the franchise. This would also be the last film written by Leigh Whannell, and while there are definitely things I enjoy about Saw 3, and it laid good groundwork for a continuous soap opera-like story for the Saw franchise, as an ending to a trilogy, it's terrible, and I feel like it is also one of the weaker entries in the Saw franchise. I'll get to explaining exactly why I feel that way, so let's just go ahead and hit play on Saw 3. So the movie actually opens up where we last saw Detective Matthews, the main character from Saw 2. So it's like, oh, cool, we're gonna be following Detective Matthews again. Even though he was kind of a cop, I felt bad the situation he was put in, and yeah, I would love to see him continues. And he like loopholes his way out of the infamous chain foot trap by, instead of cutting his foot off like Dr. Gordon, he instead breaks his foot. Now that is definitely one way to do it. Only as soon as he's let free, we cut to a title card and the story begins without Detective Matthews. We follow again the same precinct and familiar faces from past Saw movies who are inspecting a current trap that had just occurred from a different victim. Now, while they again bring back two faces of police officers that we've seen in the previous movies, they introduce someone that I'm not even going to sugarcoat it to you guys, becomes probably one of my favorite characters in the Saw franchise, Hoffman. Really only in the movie for mere minutes, and you don't get much of a personality of this guy, but boy becomes a boss, I'll just say that. The victim in question is named Troy, who constantly finds himself back in prison. So to punish him, Jigsaw puts him in what he seems to love, in chains, each attached to ligaments on his body. There is a bomb off to the side, and he must rip these chains off his skin before that bomb goes off. Now, in classic fashion, I think to myself, would I be able to escape this? And 90% of me says yeah, but that 10% is the chain on the mouth. There is no way you can rip that off and then still walk away surviving it. And well, we find that out to be true because this will introduce something new into the franchise: unwinnable traps. This really irked me as a kid. I did not love the idea of unwinnable traps because it's already so sickening to put victims in situations like this, whether they deserve it or not. It's another than to make them go through all the pain just for them to still end up dead. Now, there is a story purpose for this, but I still just want to mention my hate for unwinnable traps. But 15 minutes in, and we haven't seen Detective Matthews in a while, you would assume that Detective Carey is going to be our main character and we'll be following the film through her eyes, but no, she gets pignapped in a pretty creepy way and ends up in the infamous butterfly trap. That, look, this trap alone, awesome, but it's so hindered by the fact that it's an unwinnable trap. Even when she gets the key that is dissolving in acid and basically just ruins her hand, there is still no way for her to walk out. Finally bringing us to who is the main character of the movie, Lynn, a doctor who's a pretty brilliant surgeon who's dealing with relationship issues and trying to focus at work. She's kidnapped by Amanda and Jigsaw in order to keep Jigsaw alive for a very important trap that he would like to live to see through. Lynn's motivation to keep Jigsaw alive is this collar around her neck that if Jigsaw's pulse flatlines, she'll be shot with these shotgun shells around her. And from there, the movie goes back and forth from the situation with Amanda, the surgeon, and Jigsaw to then this person in a trap. Sticking to the stuff involving just the surgery room and Jigsaw, there's some good and bad here. To me, what was most fascinating is how much Amanda fell in love with her kidnapper and how much she cared for Jigsaw. That was kind of unsettling. And although disgusting, I love the entire sequence where Lynn is having surgery on Jigsaw. Just the look of cutting open his skin, taking a look at his skull, revealing his brain right there, and Jigsaw basically awake for the whole thing. I remember that being kind of a gnarly part of the movie. But now bringing us to talk about the person who's been put in this trap that Jigsaw wants to stay awake for is a divorced father named Jeff who recently went through a tragedy of losing a son in a car accident. The pain didn't end there because the court systems failed him and the person who killed his son only got 6 months in prison. This led him to be kind of a neglectful father to his daughter and also to take up drinking, and in Jigsaw's book, that is the same as committing the murder of the child, so you getting pignapped. You know, 3 movies in, it makes you wonder, how does Jigsaw keep up with all these random people, and how does he, you know, pick and choose them, you know? Divorced dad, lost his child, single, drinking. He needs to be tortured. But Saw 3 does set up kind of a unique situation where it's the free roam idea, but instead of you being placed in traps, you will be responsible for determining the fate of others in traps. I found that to be kind of a cool concept, and I would have liked it to play out, but it's like, Jeff is such an unlikable dude. Like, we should honestly automatically like him and feel bad for him because the guy lost a child. It should totally excuse his drinking and erratic behavior because that's something messed up to go through, but I just do not like Jeff. I can't help it. In fact, I'll say most of the characters thrown in this movie just have a hard time wanting to even see them survive. But segueing ourselves into the traps of Saw 3, because maybe that'll redeem the movie, right? We don't have that many likable characters. We have kind of weird situations going on. These traps will make up for it, right? Starting off with the first one, we find Jeff encountering the woman who witnessed his son dying but refused to testify in trial, causing his case to not be as strong. Now, this is also just a messed up situation. We find the woman basically nipping to death, and every couple of seconds she would be hit with bursts of water, turning her into this ice cube unless he decides to grab the key that'll set her free. And look, again, like, you feel bad for Jeff's situation. You maybe understand his anger, but this trap just kind of felt cruel. That'll be the recurring thing with the Saw 3 traps. I was mentioning there's like a level with some of these traps, right? Where you're like, they're crazy, psychotic, torturous traps, but there's a weirdly fun angle to them. There's a weird part of you that goes, ooh, could I survive that? Would that be fun? Oh, silly me. Something like this, you just feel like, What the F? That's just effed up, man. That's just crazy. And that'll be kind of the pattern Saw 3 follows, where the traps just, they don't have that fun factor. So Jeff, of course, is a little too slow to save the lady, and she ends up turning into an icicle, leading him down a hallway with a pretty messed up recreation of his son's death. Think about this for a second. Jigsaw's whole thing is, you know, for you to appreciate your life, to find new purpose and whatnot. What's the point of recreating the son's death with the Billy the puppet right there? That's some dark, twisted humor, Jigsaw. In this room, however, Jeff encounters the judge who was responsible for giving such a low sentence to his son's killer. He's strapped down at the bottom of this tank where every couple of seconds a rotted, mutilated pig gets shredded up, and after enough pigs, he will drown in that nasty hot dog-like water. Unless he can burn the stuffed animals that belong to his son that he was very attached to at the beginning of the movie. And look, this trap here, it's cruel, it's disgusting to look at. Like, that could have easily have been water, but instead it's just rotted pig. But I do like the psychological aspect of this trap, because while many people out there might look at that and go, bro, that is so easy, burn those animals, save that judge, get over it. But it's like, if anyone out there has had something of either a pet or a family member where they're no longer here, you hold on to that inanimate object with such love and care. Like, yeah, I kind of see Jeff's dilemma in hesitating to burn these things. And so for that reason, I kind of dig this trap, because from an outside point, it looked like so simple and easy to do, but internally, it hurts. It's hard to. Still though, Jeff does manage to get over it and just barely saves the judge, leading into Jeff finally being able to confront his son's killer, who's been placed on what I think is the most gruesome, torturous trap of the entire franchise. I know there's some out there that are maybe more bloodier or sicker to you guys. This always ends up on my top 2, top 3 traps I would never want to be attached to. The trap in question is called the rack, and every couple of seconds it'll twist your limbs a full 180 degrees unless Jeff rips out the key. That'll also cause his arm to get shot with a shotgun. This trap goes on for like 3 to 4 minutes, and you think that's kind of short, but for the pain that this man goes through, you really start questioning whether he deserved any of it at all. Once one arm breaks, you immediately want this guy out. So to me, I would say the rack is the most memorable trap of Saw 3, and whether it's cool or has that fun factor, it's a crazy Saw trap. Bring me now to talk about what I think the biggest downfall of Saw 3 is that although it tries to be kind of like a concluding chapter in maybe ending the franchise, because that was the original plan at one point, to end it all here, this third movie does so much convoluted jumping around from the first 3 films that I understand why there was a big fan base from here that jumped off the Saw train, because it was becoming too much for them. Just literally thinking about it, the movie begins with like the ending of Saw 2, following that detective, and then through flashbacks we get to see events that transpired before Saw 1, where Amanda was helping Jigsaw, and how Jigsaw injected himself with a muscle relaxer to be able to sit still for so long. Then we go into things that happen right after Saw 2 with Detective Matthews, but it's also just not even explaining things from the past, it's also teasing things in the future in case we want to continue, like Jigsaw's wife. Saw 3 would be one of the longest in the franchise, and it really just does so much flashback jumping around timeline to timeline, it doesn't become as enjoyable. It feels more like the movie is trying to put to rest certain fan theories or just full out explain to you things that happen, so that isn't up for interpretation. Because I know there's still fan theories out there like this bottom here isn't Adam, that's not him dead. There's a good chunk of the fan base that believes he survived and he's out there and this is somebody else. All in all, bringing us to the twist ending of Saw 3. So this whole time you're believing that Lynn and Jeff are not people that are connected to one another. But aha! The twist is they were married! And in the beginning, the person who was asking Lynn for a divorce was not saying it for them, but instead that she could divorce her husband so that they could be together. That was an important twist because Amanda throughout the movie was getting increasingly jealous of Lynn and didn't like how important Jigsaw was treating her, and there was also this mysterious envelope that we'll get answered about in a later sequel, but it just adds to my point of more unanswered questions and what what was supposed to be the finale. But in doing this, Amanda actually failed her own trap, and that, I think, was the bigger twist of the movie, that this entire game was not about a married couple trying to rekindle and appreciate their lives, but instead was Jigsaw second-guessing whether Amanda should be the one to take up the mantle of Jigsaw because she was making unwinnable games. And so this test was really for her to see if she could forgive, let go, and give people a fair shot. I kind of like that. It was a good test to see about his legacy, but it also completely ruins his thought process of putting people in these traps, makes them rehabilitated, changes them as people. And look, I know how messed up that sounds for me to want Jigsaw's methods to work and for it to actually quote-unquote help people, but for this franchise to continue and all the hundreds of apprentices we're about to meet, I feel like it's a vital part that needs to be able to work for the series to go on. Closing off with the biggest mistake of the franchise, Jeff just pissed at what he's been through, all the torture he's gone, not learning from Jigsaw's game about forgiveness, and killing Jigsaw with a saw. Poetic, right? Well, maybe they could have squeezed a couple of more movies out of this guy if they hadn't have done that, but from here on out, we will only be seeing Tobin Bell in flashback or prequel form that only creates more convoluted, weird, messed up storytelling that I kind of love, but I 100% understand why there is less and less fans with every Saw sequel. Oh yeah, and we also get revealed that Jigsaw still kidnapped his other daughter, placed her in a room with limited oxygen, and if he wants to find her, he's gonna have to play another game. This man lost a child, and now you're gonna make him lose another one. Cueing to a montage of different things that have happened in the past 3 Saw movies. Now look, I think Saw 3 is a weaker one. I remember thinking I liked it more, but after rewatching it, it just, yeah, I can understand why so many people jumped off the boat from here. The story started to get too convoluted, too many plot threads were going on everywhere. Things became so specific, and while that'll be the fun part of a Saw fan who like stays on the franchise, is connecting everybody and how weird the story gets, it also at the same time created limited opportunities for what could be done, to the point that now that we're on the 10th film that's about to come out, they have to go to a story all the way back to the events after the first movie with Saw X. Still, this would be the golden age of Saw, and the next couple of sequels will have a hard time reaching that goal. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the first 3 Saw movies, which traps you like the most, which ones you think you could survive, as well as anything you agree or disagree with me on. But until then, game over.